But now to our second subject of the day. Poor households across Nigeria are facing hard times with the astronomical rise in food prices and other commodities over the last 2 months. Many of them have said that they are finding it difficult to feed, even as their income continues to dwindle. Meanwhile, Nigeria's monthly inflation rate soared to 22.79% in June, a 7-year high, after President Bola Tinubu scrapped fuel subsidies and allowed the currency to weaken before declaring a state of emergency to control staple food costs. Prices rose 2.1% in a month, the most since May 2016, and annual inflation quickened to 22.79% from 22.4% in May. That's according to the data released by the National Bureau of Statistics. I'm now being joined by Professor Ihua, a trained management consultant, researcher, lecturer, and a member of the National Institute. He holds a PhD in business administration and management from the Center for Value Chain Research, Kent Business School, University of Kent. Good to have you on the show, Professor Ihua. Thank you for joining me.
Dr. Bati, my pleasure. It's great to be here again.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. But let me start with, the description, the general label for some of the, facts that are outlined in the introduction. What do you think of Tinubunomics, as it is now called? President Tinubu came onto the scene. Some people say he hit the ground running, and consistently he has rolled out a number of policies and measures. What do you think of what is now known as Tinubunomics? Your take.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bati. I think first things first is that it is clear that we have a new sheriff in town. We have a new president, and the president is rolling out his policies, whether in spite of the implication of those policies, we can see that at least the president is on ground and is putting out his policies with, of course, wide implications on citizens. We have seen, as you said, inflation up to 22.979%, and food inflation in particular about 24.03%. Of course, we've also the recent World Bank Nigeria update said that at least 4 million Nigerians have been pushed further into poverty within the last 6 months. So yes, his policies have been there: removal of fuel subsidy, the floating of the foreign exchange rate, and from the perspective of the citizens, which I represent, and being that I conduct regular public opinion polls, Nigerians are feeling the heat. Nigerians are feeling the hardship. There's hunger, poverty in the land. I mean, I just got back from the field, and one of the things I've seen evidently is that the begging in the country has spiked, and not just at motor parks or at restaurants, at wherever. Even individuals can tell that begging is on the high currently in the country. And this shows us a couple of things. One, the fact that social safety in Nigeria has been weak, has not been particularly strong, in spite of the achievements of the last administration. Secondly, it also shows that there's been a movement from our past communal lifestyle to more individualism. Also, it also shows that usual or the past social systems or structures which used to help cushion the effect of poverty are getting overstrained. So platforms like the churches, like the mosques, like religious institutions that used to help in one way or the other to cushion the effect of poverty are also now getting overstretched themselves. So, and they cannot attend to the citizens anymore. And of course, we see that because of the level of poverty and the level of hunger, crime is presently on the increase. So these are some of the implications of what we've seen from the perspectives of the general public, of the citizens, in terms of some of the policies of the president.
Well, the presidency says it has, or it is introducing a number of measures, including the review of the 8,000 naira palliative for 12 million households. They say they will go back to the drawing board, including the introduction of what the presidency calls the Infrastructure Support Fund, including the release of grains, about 252,000 metric tons of grains to all the states to provide food for the people, including also what they have called a state of emergency in the agri sector to make sure that food is available to the people. Also, the state governors, meeting under the auspices of the National Economic Council, led by the Vice President, only a few days ago came up with a number of measures. Provision of CNG, making sure that the states take charge of the social register, providing payment for arrears that are owed to civil servants, ensuring that public officers get cash transfer for at least about 6 months, and all of these measures, including increasing minimum wage. What do you think of these measures? Because in Nigeria, we hear all these policy pronouncements, but it's not always that those policy pronouncements work. But what do you think of all these ideas that they are putting out? Is it just rhetoric, or you think that all those measures are achievable?
Well, in fairness to government, I think that some of those measures are good measures. They are measures that can be achievable. But, the implementation is where the rubber meets the road. How will governments go ahead to implement those policies? For example, we talked about the 8,000. We talked about the National Social Register. I'm glad your last guest spoke extensively about it. And, incidentally, between 2018 and 2019, I was one of the evaluators of the National Social Investment Program. And we conducted some very thorough evaluation of the program. And I could tell that that register is authentic. Apologies to the governors who think that the register should be put aside. I think that the register was well conducted. But like with every register, it needs to be updated. It has a plus minus 5% margin of error, and it just needs to be verified and be updated. But as to the credibility of the register, this is a register for which the World Bank commended Nigeria, saying that the National Social Register remains a credible building block for social intervention all over the world. And it also says that what we have in Nigeria is a unique tool which other countries can study and emulate. So I think what was achieved in the last administration needs to be built upon. I know, for example, that the UNDP has used that database, UN Women, the World Food Program has used the database, the ILO has used the database, even recently, the Tode Lumelu Foundation has used the database. All manner of organizations have keyed into that database and used it for one form of intervention or the other. So I see no reason why the intervention that the government is proposing cannot make use of the database. But then, as I said, it's not just about these policies being reeled out. It's about the implementation of those policies, because we've seen in time past where policies that were released out of good intention, policies that were meant to bring succor to struggling Nigerians, ended up not achieving its purpose, as we saw in the case of the palliatives and being stored in warehouses, did not get down to the citizens who were meant to, access them, and all of that. So some of these policies are good. I would stay here to say that those policies are not good. But beyond those policies, we need to be looking at the longer-term policies that would help the economy to be more structured. For example, according to SMIDA, Nigeria has a population of about 39 million micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. How can some of these enterprises be supported such that they can employ 2, 3, 4, 5 new staff into the organization? Then we're talking about the Indian model, or where India had to power its large scale industries. So identified a few large scale industries or companies that have capacity to employ minimum of 1,000 new people, empower those companies to see how they can employ many more. But I always say that part of the twin evil of that we found from our studies is unemployment and poverty. If jobs can be created, if opportunities for people to earn a decent living, even apart from these palliatives, if they can work, they can earn, I think it has a long way to go in terms of driving crime down and in terms of even improving the standard of living of citizens. So on the one hand, while these measures are useful for short-term benefits, we need to begin to think of the longer-term economic policies that will help the economy come back to its feet and gain the needed structure that it needs to move forward. We need to begin to think massively on industrialization. What are those sectors or agricultural products which we can work across the value chain to improve? India, for example, took just a few products. It took cotton, it took jute, it took tea, it took cement, ICT, and automobile, and focused attention on these sectors. Are there sectors, are there agricultural produce that we can focus our attention on, invest massively in those sectors, then look at the impact for the potentials of export? Of course, you can see what's happening to our naira today against the dollar. The dollar is appreciating rapidly, and it's because, as has been said before, the demand side, there is huge pressure requiring dollars. However, where is the supply side? So we must begin to introduce more economic policies that focus on the supply side of the dollar. What are the sectors that we can support to bring in foreign exchange?
Professor Ihua, I like the fact that you brought up the point about micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. The governors, when they met at the National Economic Council meeting a few days ago, they said, they are recommending to the federal government to provide single-digit interest rates, funds, make funds available to the MSMEs at single-digit interest rate. Do you think that will solve the problem of the MSMEs, or there is more that is required? Because the MSMEs constitute about 70% in any case of the informal sector, if not the entire economy.
Absolutely, and it contributes about 48% of the country's GDP. So yes, single-digit interest rate would help a long way to power the MSMEs sector. But beyond the single-digit interest rate, I think we should also be thinking about grants to budding sectors, to budding industries that can generate wealth. I'll give you one quick one, for example. In the past 2-3 years, I've been investigating the what we call the future of work, and looking at certain sectors that young people in this country are focusing on and are making money. One of such sectors is this entertainment sector that has to do with skit making, comedy, and all of that. For example, one of those skit artists, whether you call Mr. Macaroni or you call Brother Shaggy, earns $40,000 monthly from those skits. Now, if we can scale that up and employ and get, say, 1,000 more young people trained and empowered to be able to come up to the level of earning $40,000, we're talking $4 million to $40 million US dollars coming into the country on a monthly basis. So my idea is that we must begin to think at what is already going on that is going on well. What are young people already doing that is generating income? Then how can we support them? There are people in this country today who are earning foreign exchange by simply going online and are doing what you call copywriting. There are those who are working on spaces that have to do with beats. I met a young man who makes beats and puts them online, and those beats are bought by people, and sometimes it makes up to $10,000 monthly making beats. So my idea is, where are these new areas, these new avenues that are already budding, that young people are already thriving in it? How can we empower more young people to come into the fray such that, it can bring about more prosperity for the nation, create more jobs, and, boost the needed foreign exchange that we're looking for? So these are the kind of things we need to begin to look at. As we're thinking of the bigger issues, we need to also begin to look at the micro areas, micro sectors that can create jobs, that can create foreign exchange revenues, and that can, get our youths off the streets.
Professor Ihua, with inflation at 22.79%, with the issues about the depreciation, devaluation of the naira, with the issues about foreign exchange, foreign reserve issues that Nigeria has, what are your expectations? Do you recommend to the MPC that interest rates should go up as a way of reining in inflation? Or do you think that the MPC should lower rates? After all, we have seen the lowering of rates in some other parts of the world, like Japan, where they go against orthodoxy. Even if Turkey went against orthodoxy, and now under Simsek, as governor of the bank, Central Bank of Turkey, we have seen a shift. What will you recommend to the MPC that would be in our best interest?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bati. I think the MPC wants to be very cautious, first of all, to weigh its options, to know if a possible reduction in the MPR would lead to further, increase in inflation. They have to weigh that option and consider what's best. But I don't think it's something that needs to be, increased at the moment, given the pain that Nigerians are already experiencing. I think for us, the crux of the matter is for the MPC to consider what are the sectors that can inspire growth in the nation at the moment. Are there sectors that need to be supported? Perhaps are there sectors that need some possible, intervention to help, cushion the impact of the foreign exchange, rates on those sectors? Are there? We should be looking at the indices that are there. Unemployment rate is anticipated to be about 41% this year. Of course, youth unemployment is at 53%. So what are those sectors that we can target that can help us reduce the level of unemployment we have, not just in the country, especially among the youth demography at the moment? Are those sectors such that if we plug in, if we reduce the interest rate for those sectors and engage with the deposit money banks, the commercial banks to invest in those sectors or to make funds available to those sectors, what would the impact be for unemployment? How many jobs can it create? Of course, we should be looking also at the wider level. We should be looking also at our procurement in the country. How much does procurement add to creating jobs? If we give a contract of 50 million naira, how many more jobs would that create? If we give a contract of 100 million, how many? And can we track contracts that are given to jobs that are being created? If we are going to issue a new contract of 200 million, can we be sure that that 200 million will create new 500 jobs or new 1,000 jobs? I think these are the areas we need to be looking at, because of the current indicators that we have at the moment.
Okay, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Professor Bell Ihua, for joining us on this Live, this Sunday talk show. Thank you very much indeed for your time.